See Danny Kanell, former Florida State quarterback, here with us here in the studio. Danny, you gave FSU the pep talk in the pregame show today. It obviously didn't work.
No, it didn't work. The reality is right now Florida State is not a good football team, and you could have made that case before this game as well. But this was sort of the last chance to salvage a season and sell the fan base, sell the players on hope that things are going to get better. You're playing at home. It's off a bye week, and he came out and laid an egg. I thought before this would be the biggest challenge of Mike Norvell's tenure at Florida State, and I feel even more conviction in that because he's got to keep this locker room together somehow when things feel like they're coming off the rails. And that's going to be really hard to do with a team that the preseason expectation was you are competing for an ACC championship, a spot in the playoff, and now that's an absolute pipe dream where it's almost impossible. So how do you keep this team motivated on a daily, weekly basis when it feels like the season is lost?
They are the first team in college football history to be ranked in the preseason top 10 and start 0-3 with all 3 losses coming to unranked opponents. So when you look at this Florida State team then, Danny, what's the problem? What's the main problem for you?
There's a laundry list of problems. Yes. They haven't lived up to the hype, right? Because this was a defensive line that people thought was the best in the country. It was an offensive line which had a ton of veterans. And then it was a quarterback that was a guy that was brought in the transfer portal, and DJ Uyunglele, who I just think Florida State missed on. I think they thought they could put him in a position to succeed because they would have a dominant defense, a run game to support him, and then he could play that role of game manager. The way things have unfolded, he's been exposed as somebody who cannot put the team on his shoulders, and that's been a huge problem for Florida State, so much so where I do think Mike Norvell will really have to consider making a QB change, which is tough because you're only 3 games into the season. You paid DJU a lot of money to be this quarterback for your school, but at some point you cannot worry so much about his confidence level that you are afraid to bench him and take him out of the game. You just might have to make a decision to go in a different direction to see what it looks like and see if it provides the team a spark.
16 of 30 today for 201 yards and the 1 interception. Were you surprised that Norvell maybe didn't turn to Glenn today?
I did. I thought at halftime, because it was so bad in the first half, it was so conservative, it was very much, there was this horizontal pass game. They didn't try to stretch the field vertically, and it looked like they were trying to protect DJ and not expose him to tougher throws where he could have an interception, or, you know, you just wanted to protect him. And it wasn't working, and I thought there would be a chance for Brock Glenn to come in and he could spark the offense. He's a better runner. The offensive line has struggled to protect DJ because he's been very much a statue in the pocket. Instead, I always defer to the coaches. Like, they see practice, they see what's unfolding, and Brock Glenn was not great last year. He was worse than DJU has been in the ACC championship game and the Orange Bowl. But at some point, I wonder what the locker room thinks. And that's truly what I don't know is going on there in Tallahassee. But I would imagine the defense is tired of being on the field the whole entire game, watching 3-and-outs and watching mistakes being made on the offensive side of the ball, that you just try to shake things up a little bit because what's working right now, the formula, is clearly failing.
Cardale Jones said earlier that, you know, one of the things that Florida State just doesn't realize is going into this game is that it was all still in front of them. The college football playoff, they have the opportunity to go and win the ACC and make the college football playoff. Now they're a 3-loss team.
Yeah, I mean, and I was even talking to Cardale before this, and he's like, hey, you guys can still do it. You know, like, you can't even think about that right now. You've got to get ready to go for your next opponent. And this is where, you know, I know some coaches may use different motivational tactics and try to sell that. They do have Miami left on the schedule. They still have Clemson. They still have a lot of ACC games that they potentially could win. They have to get ready for Cal. Like, that's the next opponent on the schedule. Be ready. It is a conference game, but they have so many issues to iron out. They can't even be discussing playoffs because it would make them look foolish. They have to worry about beating one opponent before they can start worrying about the playoffs.
FSU coming into this had won 9 of the last 10 meetings between the two. The other one was a tie, and this was their first meeting since 1990. But now when you look at Memphis, 3-0 in the American. I mean, are we talking enough about this Memphis team?
No, they were in that conversation for best group of 5 team, which getting an access to the playoff this year, there will be a battle, a resume battle, who has the best wins. And we've already seen Northern Illinois from the MAC beat Notre Dame. We saw UNLV beat Kansas, and this is Memphis beating a Power 4 opponent in Florida State. What I wonder for Memphis is, how does this win look at the end of the season? Because right now it looks like an average win. They almost have to root for Florida State to get things fixed so that it looks better. Either way, Memphis, if they win the American, which I do think is probably the strongest Group of 5 conference, and they have this win in Tallahassee, I think it probably does clinch them as the best Group of 5 team. Remember, Boise State had an opportunity to beat Oregon, came up short, and Oregon might be a better team, but they still lost that game. And I don't know if the Mountain West carries as much weight as the American.
The Memphis, by the way, have won 6 straight road games, and they've won 11 of the last 12 versus non-conference opponents when you include this game today, and scoring 20 or more points in 30 straight games. It's the longest active streak in college football. Big win today over Florida State, 20-12. They're going to be talking about this probably for the duration of the week.
Do we
here
have
on the
to?
Cover 3. Yeah.
Gosh.
Danny, you know they're not going to let you off the hook. Chip, Tom, and Bud are not going to let you off the hook. You're off the hook tonight for the reaction show. We know that. It's past your bedtime. So the reaction show is coming up later tonight. The Cover 3 podcast. This is the best college football podcast out there. And I'm not just saying that because it actually is. So download and follow wherever you get your podcasts, or scan that QR code to listen to the latest episode right now.